In this lesson, we'll continue our review of Math Test 10, Section 4, Calculator Permitted Run, the last two questions before the grid ends, 29 and 30. All right, let's take a look at 29. We have a formula. The formula above can be used to approximate the height h in inches of an adult male based on the length L in inches of his femur. What's the meaning of 1.88? This is a common question. I'm actually surprised it's so late in the section because it's really not that difficult if you know this concept. Whenever you have a linear equation in slope-intercept form, a lot of times the question might be, what does, let's say, 32.01 mean? And 32.01 would be, in the context of this problem, like the initial value, right? It's the y-intercept. And 1.88 is what they're asking here, is what does the slope mean? And just to review, if you ever have an equation, a linear equation, in slope-intercept form, so let's just say, here's just a linear equation. I know this is set to a real life situation, but for every increase of x, if x goes up by 1, y would increase by the slope. Just remember that concept. And sometimes they'll switch it around, but not too often. So for every increase in y by 1, the x would be, in this case, an increase by the inverse of the slope. It'd be 1/2. And so here's the height, that's the h. And this is the length of the femur. And so they're just asking us what the slope means, and you can almost predict this before looking at the choices. For every increase of 1 inch of the femur, that's the x, we know the height increases by the slope, which is 1.88. So if you look at the answer choices, I'm not going to read all these, but it's obviously D, the approximate increase in a man's height, that is the y, in inches for each 1 inch increase in his femur. Like, the really straightforward question. I'm, again, surprised to see it so late in the section. It's D. All right, last question before we start the grid is number 30. In quadrilateral A, B, C, D above, AD is parallel to BC and CD is 1/2 of AB. What's the measure of angle B? So here's angle B right here. Very few geometry questions on the new test, and one concept I always recommend, if you ever see what I call an irregular shape, it's not a circle or a rectangle or a triangle, you want to split it up. And so here we can split it up and make this a rectangle and a triangle, and we're trying to find this angle here, and we're given that AD is parallel to BC, so these are parallel. So this is 90 and these are parallel lines, right? This is 90, these are all 90s right here. So we already have 190. We just have to figure out this angle here from this triangle and add it to 90, and that's the answer. And the other piece of information we're given that CD is 1/2 of AB. Here's CD. We know that this would also be the same. And here's AB. It's the hypotenuse of the triangle. Whenever you're given a condition, a good concept is to put a value in that satisfies it, just to make it more concrete. And so what we do, for example, is say, all right, if this is 6, this would be 3. And now we've got to find this angle. I know we only have one interior angle, but this is where it really helps if you know your special triangles. Anytime you see a right triangle that has a 2-to-1 ratio between a side and a hypotenuse, that is 30, 60, 90. Again, you should really know this. It's given at the beginning of the section, but you shouldn't have to refer back. You should know these really just instantly. So when you ever see a 2-to-1 ratio between a side and a hypotenuse, that's 30, 60, 90, and the 60 is x root 3. Right? So again, we don't have to figure out the values. I just made these up, but we followed the rules, 2-to-1 ratio. And so here is the x and here's the 2x. So that means this angle is 30 because across from that is the x. This obviously is the 90. And here, this would be, in this case, the x root 3, 3 root 3. But again, the values we chose don't matter as long as we follow the conditions. And so across from the 3 root 3 is 60. And so the measure of B, it's 90. And then we split it up, and it's 60, it's 150.